How's it going? So in this video here, we're going to be talking a little bit about the autonomic nervous system and basically the difference between our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. And so I'd like to start off here with a chart. And so for the sympathetic nervous system, we know that that's always going to increase our heart rate. It's going to be known as a fight or flight. Our parasympathetic nervous system is going to want to decrease our heart rate, and it's going to be more of a rest and digest type feeling. Our body's going to slow down more. We're going to be able to digest our food. And so for our parasympathetic nervous system, as well as our parasympathetic as well as our sympathetic, it's going to be a two-neuron system. And so what that means is that there's going to be two neurons that work together to deliver their information and their signal to the heart. And so our first neuron is going to release a neurotransmitter known as acetylcholine. And this is for the sympathetic. Our second neuron is going to release norepinephrine. For the parasympathetic nervous system, our first neuron is going to release acetylcholine, and our second neuron is going to release acetylcholine as well. And so these two neurons are going to work together, and they're going to either increase or decrease our heart rate. One more important fact, which differentiates sympathetic from parasympathetic, is that the sympathetic is going to be able to affect the conductile cardiomyocytes, and it's also going to be able to affect the contractile cardiomyocytes. Whereas our parasympathetic is only going to be able to affect our conductile cardiomyocytes. So now that we know the main differences between the sympathetic and parasympathetic, let's get a little into the physiology of it and what's actually going on. Alright, so let's first start off with our sympathetic nervous system. And so here we have our central nervous system, which is composed of the brainstem and the spinal cord. And then outside of that is going to be our peripheral nervous system. And so our preganglionic neuron, which is going to be our first neuron, its cell body is going to be located in the spinal cord here. So let's say we have these two neurons here. And these neurons are going to be short. They're going to be kind of in parallel with each other. And so their cell body, which is here, is going to be located in the spinal cord. And so it's going to generate an action potential. This action potential is going to synapse off here into the peripheral nervous system, and it's going to release a neurotransmitter, like we talked about, known as acetylcholine. And I'm just going to abbreviate ACH. So it's going to release acetylcholine, and now we have our second neuron. And so these neurons here are going to have nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, which are going to take the acetylcholine and generate a generating potential. Now this potential is going to turn into an action potential, and now these neurons are going to carry its electrical signal to the heart. And so, like I was saying, the sympathetic can deliver its electrical signal to conductile cardiomyocytes as well as contractile cardiomyocytes. And so this neuron, let's take this one, it's going to come over here, and it's going to synapse off onto our contractile cardiomyocyte, and this one over here is going to come and it's going to synapse off onto our conductile cardiomyocyte. And these neurons here are going to release norepinephrine, and I'm going to abbreviate it as NE. And so over here, we've released our norepinephrine, and this norepinephrine is going to attach onto a G protein coupled receptor. And so this receptor is going to span the membrane about 7 times as such. And these are going to be located on both the contractile as well as the conductile cardiomyocytes. And so once this norepinephrine attaches onto our G protein coupled receptor, what that's going to do is it's going to increase our levels of cyclic AMP. And so for both, we're going to increase our levels of cyclic AMP. And by increasing our levels of cyclic AMP, we're going to have different effects, because for the conductile cardiomyocyte, what that's going to do is, in turn, it's going to generate a faster heart rate by allowing more influx of Na+. So we're going to be able to have more influx of Na+, which is going to help speed up our heart rate. And for the contractile cardiomyocytes, this increase in cyclic AMP is going to turn on our protein kinase A. And so our protein kinase A is going to have many functions in our contractile cardiomyocyte. So if you think of, let's draw a T-tubule right here. So that's our T-tubule. And remember, on our T-tubule, we have our DHP receptors. Here we have our sarcoplasmic reticulum with our Ca2+ pumps. And on the sarcoplasmic reticulum, we also have our rhamidine receptors. So here we have our DHP receptors. Here we have our rhamidine. And so basically what the protein kinase A does is it's going to phosphorylate the Ca2+ pumps, the DHP receptors, as well as the rhamidine receptors. So it's going to affect here, it's going to affect there, and it's going to affect there. And by phosphorylating these channels, what that's going to allow is for the Ca2 pumps to pump in calcium faster, which we're going to have a shorter contraction, but they're going to be stronger. For the rhamidine receptors and the DHP, that's going to increase. For the DHP, it's going to increase the calcium influx into the cell, and for the rhamidine, it's going to increase the calcium efflux out of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And so by doing all that, we're going to speed up our heart rate, we're going to have a stronger contraction. And so for the sympathetic nervous system, its main effect is to increase our heart rate. And so it's going to be able to affect both our conductile as well as our contractile cardiomyocytes. All right, so for our parasympathetic nervous system, it's only going to affect our conductile cardiomyocytes. And so here, we're going to have our preganglionic cell body located in the brainstem. And so this neuron is going to be longer, and it's going to come all the way to the heart, and it's going to synapse off in the heart known as an area known as the cardiac ganglia. So if you can imagine the heart, it drops off here into the heart, and it's releasing its acetylcholine. And so our acetylcholine is going to attach onto our second neuron here, and this one's going to be known as our postganglionic neuron. And so this neuron here is going to synapse off onto our SA node. And it can also synapse off onto the AV node or the Purkinje fibers. But the main thing we want to remember for the parasympathetic is that it's only going to affect our conductile cardiomyocytes. And so our first order neuron, its cell body is going to be located in the brainstem. Our second order neuron, its cell body is going to be located in the cardiac ganglia. And so this second order neuron is going to release its neurotransmitter, and that's also going to be acetylcholine. And so we're going to release our acetylcholine, and if we zoom in here onto, let's just say, our SA node here as our conductile cell, it's going to have a G protein coupled receptor, which is going to span the membrane 7 times, and we're going to have our neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, and one of them, and it's going to attach on here to our G protein coupled receptor. And so what that's going to do is it's going to have an inhibitory effect, and it's not going to allow us to increase our levels of cyclic AMP, but it's going to decrease our levels of cyclic AMP. And so if we decrease our levels of cyclic AMP, what that's going to do is in turn decrease our heart rate. And so it's going to be decreasing our heart rate. Another effect that it has is it's going to affect our K+ channels here. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow K+ to flow out. And if our K+ flows out, K+ efflux, we're going to decrease our resistance. And if we decrease our resistance, we're not going to be able to generate an action potential as quickly. And so the main effect of the parasympathetic nervous system is to slow down our heart rate